This Degenerate Little Town by Thomas Ligotti. 1. The greatest secret, which appears in no religious doctrine, and is found nowhere in the world's overburdened library of myths and fables, nor receives the slightest mention in any philosopher's system or scientist's speculation. The greatest secret, perhaps the only secret, is that the universe, all of creation, owes its existence to a degenerate little town. And if it were possible to strip away all the scenery that surrounds us, to pull up the landscape of every planet, to rip away the skies and shove aside the stars and suns, to tear from ourselves our own flesh and delve deep into our bones, we would find it right there, the origin of all things, visible or invisible, the source of everything that is, or ever can be, this degenerate little town. And then we would discover in twisting streets and tilting houses its decaying ground and rotting sky. With our own eyes, we would see the diseased faces peeking from grimy windows. Then we would realize why it is such a secret, the greatest and most vile secret. This degenerate little town, where everything began, and from whose core of corruption everything seeps out. 2. From the beginning, if there was a beginning, this degenerate little town has become ever more degenerate, its streets more twisted, its houses more tilting, its ground more decayed, and its sky more rotten. Those faces behind ever more grimy windows have become ever more diseased, and in the end... But there can never be an end, not for this degenerate little town, no more than an end will ever come for all the worlds that have seeped out of it, because everything we know has always been degenerate, everything more twisted and tilting, more diseased and decayed, rotting from the very sky. This is the law of things in a world, in a universe that has its source and origin in a degenerate little town. If there was a beginning and will go on with its degeneration, its ceaseless twisting and tilting, its disease and decay, its infinite shades of rottenness, until all that exists is less than nothing. 3. We cannot help but wonder, in our most perverse moments, what it would be like to inhabit this degenerate little town, where the sky is forever dripping its rottenness like rain, to be among those faces that are diseased faces, peeking through the glass of grimy windows and out into the twisting streets, lined with tilting houses, in a town that is constantly degenerating and continues to degenerate with each passing moment. We cannot help but wonder in our most perverse moments, as we look through bleary eyes and see the stars spread out like so much glittering debris, scattered across the blackness, without any apparent order, an infinity of shining litter that will never be picked up. And yet we will stupidly wonder. We still whisper to ourselves, or cry out in our dreams, "Oh, where is the way to this degenerate little town?" 4. There are those among us who claim to have seen this degenerate little town, although they remain unaware of its true nature. There are those who have emerged from some painful ordeal of the body when they felt their flesh rotting upon their bones, or endured a derangement of mind that caused them to speak of how they saw before them an outline of emaciated houses, tilting this way and that, or walked along some twisting streets and felt the ground soft with decay beneath their steps, or even glimpsed those diseased faces, their skin rough and pale as plaster, peeking from behind grimy windows. Those who claim to have seen such things are filled with a terrible conviction, though even they seem to hope that their words are all lies or illusions, that what they say they have seen could never have truly happened. And so we stare at them suspiciously, as if with sadness or pity, even if all the while we shudder that the same could happen to us, if only in our nightmares, which of course are real, as the degenerate little town. 5. Where is this place, this degenerate little town? What is its name? Who are its creators? Such questions are inevitable for those amongst us sick beings who can barely suffer an existence that is overcast, suffocated by a terror of the unknown. Throughout their lives, and in the face of death, their questions only multiply. Are there seasons in the land of this town? Is there a springtime in which great rains pour down from that rotting sky? Are there sultry summers that perpetrate a heavy stillness within those twisting streets? And what of its autumns? Are they succulent with colors of decay? Do the winters there, in this degenerate little town, pile weighty snows upon those tilting houses? So many questions about this secret place. And for those among us, sick beings, one question is the most troubling. That is, what is it that so afflicts the diseased faces that gaze behind the glass of grimy windows? Could we bear to know its nature? And might it one day make its way from that degenerate town to ours? If nothing else, perhaps some questions are best left unasked and unanswered. 6. Like every phenomenon that is occult in its essence, this degenerate little town hides itself from itself. Only those from elsewhere can adore its mysteries and succumb to its allure. They are blind to the truth that beneath its rotting sky lurks a world of pain no different from their own. And by then it is too late. Like every phenomenon we have faced in our lives, however occult in its essence, this degenerate little town is only a tempting disguise for festivals of anguish. It gnaws at our bones in ways we could not foresee, distracted as we had become by its facade of tilting houses. Ultimately, we abandon hope and settle our weary selves behind the glass of grimy windows and stare out upon twisting streets. This degenerate little town has always been our home. A place of agonies, perhaps, but as good a place as any other to hide yourself from yourself. 7. It may be quite likely that we are grotesquely mistaken to think there is anything special, anything remarkable at all about this degenerate little town. Far from being the greatest secret, the world, the worst, or the finest of all our dreams, it may quite likely be the greatest commonplace, the supreme banality. Consider the possibility. Who has not loitered beneath a rotting sky, a sky putrid with all that has been heaved into it during every epoch of this earth, this ground where we walk, so soft with the decay of everything that has ever lived upon it? We know it well. And who has not traveled through twisted streets and under the shadow of houses, even the straightest of which, if our eyes could only see it, is veering toward a tilt? As for diseased faces, they are all prevailing to the point of embarrassment. And so much for this civic marvel that is beyond the blackness of night or resides deep in our bones. Yet if this is the case, as it quite likely may be, what remains for us in a universe where there is nothing special, nothing of any account, let alone the saving miracle of this degenerate little town? Eight. It seems entirely natural that, should anyone gain full knowledge of this degenerate little town, they would deny the truth of this greatest, most terrible of secrets, and would fabric some other set of circumstances as a means of protecting their individual well-being and that of all living things. This would explain so many of the deranged idols and beliefs that have arisen in our world. At least we would be able to account for the multitudes of mannequin saviors, as one might view them, their faces smooth and serene behind display windows, welcoming the faithful who, upon their death, will enter a department store paradise of the most vague and intangible delights. And some mention must be made of what might be called the sect of the Puppet Lands, whose highly deranged adherents posit a transcendent universe of infinite and harmless antics that are imperfectly mirrored in the chaos and crises of our own world. For one truth we know: this degenerate little town is a hypostasis of the one we inhabit, and thus, by logic, is surpassingly awful. Who would begrudge any of us our denials or alternate renderings, for the sake of sweet sanity, of the twisted streets and tilting houses, the diseased faces and grimy windows? More than a mere reflection of known reality, it is the very apex of its every aspect. Thus, by virtue of this grim attunement, even the bravest among us must be allowed this lie that when the great puppet play is concluded, we will enjoy a sweet bedtime of slumber, if only until the next show begins. Nine. We sometimes imagine that we have heard voices, strange and harsh voices, faintly calling from beyond the blackness of night or from deep in our bones. And even if there are no actual words, no actual language we know in which the voices speak, still there is a terrible understanding delivered into our world that only a few may comprehend and none would desire. For this understanding, this message of strange, harsh voices from beyond the blackness of night or from deep in our bones declares that this degenerate little town, that greatest of secrets, is only a facade or a mirage, a picturesque lie or illusion in the guise of twisted streets and tilting houses. All the rottenness and diseases which we sense as the source of all things we know or can ever know. In fact, it is something else altogether, something which none could comprehend or desire to comprehend, yet which they cannot fail to hear when it slips through the sounds of those strange and harsh voices from beyond the blackness of night or from deep in our bones. Indeed, it is something else altogether, not at all a tangible locus we may depict by means of lyric invention, but an unbodied entity, an abstract malice, whose sole attribute is known to us as a hollow resonance of the most dismal laughter. Even though there is no evidence that a degenerate little town forms the greatest secret and is the source of all the things we know, its truth and its existence remain assured, and there do seem to be certain indications, certain aspects and elements of our lives that in no uncertain terms inform us of one fact: sooner or later we will find ourselves at the mercy of this degenerate little town, whatever it may be, because when the sky begins to darken, as if rotting before our eyes, and when our bones begin to change, growing soft with decay, we know that all the ways of our lives have been leading us and can only lead us to this degenerate little town, as it is known to us. And then we may understand that everything around us and everything within us has a direct point of contact to that manifestation, that source of all things. Dreams, for instance, the substance of our sleep, wherein every mind is destined to go twisted and tilting into lands of swift magic. These dreams alone make the case, if anything were ever needed by the way of evidence. These dreams alone evidence our helpless dangling beneath the severe gaze of those diseased faces, behind the glass of grimy windows, as if they are waiting for someone to arrive, as if they are waiting for everyone, sooner or later, to enter their little town and be swallowed by it.